Cape Town. Can we have some life in here, please? I started at 5 a.m. this morning, so we're going to have to lift this energy up a little bit in this place, guys. Welcome to Fundraise Con. We're super stoked to have all of you guys here. We're blessed with a really fun lineup tonight of incredible investors, awesome entrepreneurs who have raised capital and who are going to share some of their journeys about, around that process of raising capital in South Africa. We're going to listen to some fundraising specialists who have, really put some of those raises together and can share some of their content, and a whole bunch of other interesting people that you guys would have probably seen in the lineup. Just from our side, from Outsource CFO, I think it's just such a privilege always to bring people together, to have conversations here in Cape Town about entrepreneurship, about this electric ecosystem that brings more and more people together. Young people and people from all walks of life are building companies in Cape Town, and it feels like this. Every time I go to an event the last couple of weeks, it just feels like there's electricity in the air around what's happening here. And Fundraise Con is a very special one for us. It's the first event of our annual calendar every year. It's around one of the topics that are really complicated. As an entrepreneur, to actually raise capital is generally a difficult, long, complex process. And we were trying to demystify it by speaking to people who've actually done it, people who invest in entrepreneurs, and who really know the ins and outs of this fundraising journey. So tonight I want to invite you guys just to connect with each other in between. So we'll have a bit of a break, we'll have an after, there's a couple of drinks on the house, stay and mingle, and the people you meet and the connections you make here, that is a big part of what tonight's about. And then in terms of the lineup, every person who we're calling onto the stage are here for an absolute reason. So try to drink that in, take that in, and just make it your own. Use some of that for your own journey, or your client's journey, or your investees' journey, or whatever the scenario is. Have fun. We're going to get to meet some people tonight here that you don't often get in the same room together from an investor's perspective. It's going to be really cool. I just wanted to say from our sponsor side, I don't know if the Zoho crew is Lucille? Zoho crew is somewhere on their way to our Zoho crew is on their way in traffic. We're a little bit early for a workday start, but we thought we'll build some extra early evening time in to mingle and to have fun. But very grateful for them as ecosystem partners, along with Founders Foundation and Zero, who help us make events like this possible. Just to that lady in the back, Lucille, you have to give a wave. That's Lucille, guys. Please give her a clap. Yeah. Lucille is our marketing and events head at Outsource CFO, and she does an absolute stellar job every couple of months to bring a lot of interesting people together. It's like herding cats. She's become so good at it. Guys, I'm not going to run through the entire lineup. It is online. If you want to go to foundersevents.co.za, the whole agenda is on the main page. What I would rather do is introduce you guys to our famous first speaker. We are very lucky to have Mr. Setlugani here from Johannesburg, all the way in. He's from Investec's CSI team, and a big part of what they do at Investec is support entrepreneurs in their development, in the building of their companies, as well as in some fundraising instances. So we've asked this man to tell us a little bit about why they, as a global multinational investment bank, support entrepreneurship, and why it's important to the context of South Africa that entrepreneurs succeed. Seth, can I hand over to you? Sure. Brilliant.
I think you may need to turn off the mic because I have a natural loud voice, and now if you couple that with a mic, we will be in trouble. OCFO, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the invitation for me to be part and parcel of this evening in response to the question, why should entrepreneurs in SA raise funds? As a social investment practitioner, I consider myself a social entrepreneur, which inevitably informs the lens through which I will respond to the question why entrepreneurs in SA ought to fundraise. And firstly, I really want to say, let me start off by saying that in the face of real day-to-day socio-economic challenges. South Africa cannot afford to look to government alone to address these many social ills or to make a difference. But most importantly, we therefore should seek the active participation of ordinary folk, local and international NGOs, philanthropists, and established businesses such as Investec to try and make a difference in society. But I think most importantly, we must acknowledge and encourage the possible participation of emerging entrepreneurs in helping alleviate the pressures that South Africa faces on a day-to-day. Unemployment is the biggest hurdle for our country to overcome in meeting its national development goals and of eliminating poverty and reducing inequality. And we know that no sustainable government should ever be regarded as an employment agency, such as ours often is. That's a problem. And that the biggest job creators in any vibrant economy are businesses. Therefore, the pressure is on us to have as many startups as we possibly can. In other words, we can never, ever have enough startups in a South African context. So one of the most important reasons why entrepreneurs should fundraise, to the extent to which there are possible investors keen to support such, is for startup purposes. We have to have as many as these as possible. We can never, ever have enough. You know, there are two ways to launch a business, with or without funding. Right? That's what it is. However, the majority of startups fall into the second category. Right? To a point where you entrepreneurially minded individuals have even given it a name. What do you call it? Bootstrap. Right? And yes, we must acknowledge that while bootstrapping happens, in some instances it's not viable and hence the need for possible fundraise. So entrepreneurs in South Africa must fundraise to directly contribute to the number of businesses that are started in this country. Please be reminded that we must be cognizant of the high number of people who remain excluded from active economic participation. I can't help but go back to the June-July unrest, and I'm not trying to justify it. Will not in any shape try to justify those unrests. But the biggest challenge in this country is there are way too many people who are not invested. There are way too many people in this country who've got very little to lose. And our responsibility is to return people back to the economic table. So, of course, money is the backbone of any business, and availability of funds is essential. I mean, during the first year of operation, lack of funds is the most common problem faced by SMEs, and one of the main reasons why we see them shut down. Then we move on to the next reason, besides startup purposes, is you see, besides making money, entrepreneurs seek to solve everyday problems, meet needs, and ease pain points through their products, services that are delivered in deliberately structured and oriented businesses. So I'll give an example. Being an educational enthusiast, I can't help but be engulfed in a state of despair when looking at the state of our South African public schooling system, which is quite frankly in ICU. Yet I'm encouraged by the possibility of people such as yourselves who will see nothing but opportunity to derive and add value in this space, either through the creation of low-cost schools online learning platforms, and many other viable solutions. The point that I'm really trying to drive home is this. In a country such as ours, beset by so many challenges, which in themselves are opportunities for entrepreneurially minded individuals such as yourselves, we must encourage fundraising that is to go towards businesses that deliver value by turning each and every single societal challenge into a business opportunity. We have to fundraise in a way that will enable us to cleverly combine commercial and community issues in a way that improves the lives of people. In this way, entrepreneurs have to fundraise in pursuit of making a meaningful difference and contribution in society. I told you that my lens was a particular lens. Never in South Africa has there ever been such a crying need for entrepreneurs who do not only succeed, but who have the ability to positively impact and transform communities and broader society. Addressing such challenges may require you to invest in innovation capacity. So sometimes entrepreneurs should fundraise for research and development purposes. This is also equally important, particularly in a country such as ours, where we should seek to continuously look for innovative solutions. Another reason why entrepreneurs in SA should fundraise is for expansion and growth purposes. We've got to do this. Because getting a new business venture started, making it sustainable, and being able to grow, it's no easy task, granted. But the expansion of our business's local footprint, either in the form of establishing additional factories, stores, strengthening our distribution side and platform and ability, ought to be the focus too. And it's never financially easy. Hence, the need to fundraise. Equally, your next fundraise may very well enable your big dreams. For example, that of making bold moves. That's what we should do. That's what we should encourage entrepreneurs to do. Changing tact from being a locally focused business to being a globally focused business. Remember, South Africa has a lot to offer the world. Never downplay that ability. So in this instance, we would fundraise to better position ourselves to take full advantage of growth opportunities. Never forget that the bigger you become, the more difference you can make. In the end, when all is said and done, we ought to accept that entrepreneurship is a channel to make a difference. And through it, we must foster, as much as possible, the emergence and growth of businesses that have a positive social environmental impact. In the growth and success of your business lies the growth and success of many other people. That's why we ought to go out and fundraise. That's why we ought to go out and grow these businesses. And the pace of inclusion is not happening fast enough. And my challenge to you as I conclude is to seek opportunities that enable us. If we were poised to succeed in 10 years, how do we fast track the pace at which we can succeed? Because we ought to lift others as we rise. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and I wish you a wonderful evening.
There was a reason we put Seth first on the agenda tonight. Seth Logani, thank you so much for that. That was really special and encouraging. Love your passion and your energy that you pour into this space. Guys, the fundraising program that Seth has orchestrated through his sheer love for South Africa and entrepreneurs has created over 800 jobs to date, right? The two programs they run, and they've raised tens of millions of rands for entrepreneurs in the early stages to do really cool things in South Africa. So yeah, just give this man another clap, please. Okay, guys, then we're going to do our first panel. Can I maybe ask my first panel to just join me on stage so long while we open the floor? Christian, Matt, Craig, Ayanda. But Christian, will you come stand here next to me for starters, please? Okay, guys, before we climb into this this next panel, we just thought we'll take a moment tonight to just recognize this man. Christian has added a couple of letters behind his name this last week. This man is officially a chartered accountant, South Africa. Can we? And he is the very first person to come through Outsource CFO's CA program, and he's just qualified, and he has been a part of raising, was it 48 million rand worth of funding to date in the last 12 odd months? So yeah, very, very proud of this man next to me, and he knows so much about fundraising. I think we would have loved to have been in his shoes by the time we qualified, light years ahead of us. Well done, and congratulations, man. Thanks so much. Okay, guys. So these are all of our fundraising experts. We've asked them for tips, tools, tricks, like what can we learn from them about fundraising. All of them have been involved in different kinds of raises. Christian, take us away.
Thanks. Hang on. Look. It is on. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Lynn. I really appreciate that introduction. And we've been asked to speak a bit about tips on capital raising. I think capital raising is such a broad term. It emphasizes everything from debt to equity and all the weird and wonderful instruments in the middle. So I'm very privileged to have a panel today that has a very wide spread of experience throughout this entire spectrum. So I'd just like everyone to quickly give a hand for my panel. Then we'll go into a quick introduction. Ayanda, can you maybe just tell us a bit about yourself and your fundraising experience?
Thanks so much, Christian. As he's mentioned, my name is Ayanda Vabaza Mvandaba, and I've worked with Christian a little bit, and it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know him and seeing his potential. I am an entrepreneur. I think that's what I would call myself, a little bit of a capital entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur, as Sitlhane has mentioned. Previously, I used to work with SMMEs to assist them with fundraising, and I've now graduated. I'm now on the investor side of things, so managed to gather some money, and now I'm investing. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, great.
Hi everyone, my name is Craig West. I'm a co-owner and CFO of WCB Holdings. We are a construction civil engineering company. We've managed to raise funds with the assistance of OCFO with age growth to the sum of about 20 million. It's assisted us in our growth to date to where we are the biggest black youth-owned civil engineering company in South Africa.
Yeah, evening everyone. Matt Klus, co-founder and CFO at Comparisure. I started my career in the actuarial world, moved from there into consulting. Most recently was quite excited to quit my corporate finance job in London and move back to South Africa to really commit to, trying to solve some of the problems that Sitlhane was chatting on with our business solutions. I've still got goosebumps, by the way.
Amazing. Yes, as you can see, widespread between debt and equity experience and just fundraising specialists in general. Ayanda, you're sitting right next to me, so I think I'll pick on you first. So Ayanda, one of the things I hear quite often is people are always excited about all the successful fundraisers you see on LinkedIn and social media. But the truth is there's also quite a lot of unsuccessful fundraisers. And people will ask me quite often, what's the biggest reason for this? And as I need to confess, there's quite a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons are entrepreneurs are not prepared when they enter fundraising. They don't really know what they get themselves into. So is there anything that you can recommend how can entrepreneurs be better prepared when they start their fundraising journey?
Thanks, Christian. I want to share a quick story from 2 weeks ago. So the businesses that we're investing in, and when I say we, it's myself and my husband have started a family business, our family office, and we're investing in township economy businesses. So with a keen focus on businesses that give back to the township economy. And so we had an entrepreneur come to us for funding just 2 weeks ago, and that's in the gaming space, and him wanting to set up like a little gambling store in the township. So I said, can I please see your proposal? Can I see your pack? What have you done already? How far are you? What's happening with the licensing and all of that? And he just like stormed out. And then he came back and he said, I'm sorry, I just needed to correct myself, because that's the problem with you investors. You just want to see how well I can write English. And I just thought, okay, I get it. I get his frustration. It's been 3 years of him, sitting in these meetings and talking to people, but no one is actually giving him feedback. No one is saying, actually, you've got a great idea, but this is how we can make it better. And this is how we can package it nicely for an investor, for someone that's willing to put money in your business, but also needs something out of it. And that has given him a whole new level of hopelessness and fatigue. But it's also a function of the entrepreneurs that I'm seeing in the township, when no one is willing to give them a chance. So there's a lot of fatigue that goes into it. There's also a lack of feedback for the entrepreneurs. So they don't know where they could improve. They don't know where they're going wrong. But also they're just not prepared to sit in front of a CJ or Ayanda or a Dana or a Lo and present what the potential returns could be and what the impact could be and what does the 5-year forecast look like. And it's so easy to say, but you're not prepared, but they just don't know. They just don't know better, and they don't have access to the resources that can help them know.
Sure. Thanks, Ayanda. That is, really some food for thought. Matt, I think you've sat on the other side of the table, being the investee, had to endure the investor grillings. Does any of this resonate with you?
Definitely. I think Ayanda touched on so many key points there. I mean, the first thing to acknowledge is that fundraising is really, really hard. It's really hard. I think Paul Graham captured it really well. He's one of the best sort of out there in terms of advice, but it's hard in two ways. One, it's just intrinsically hard to get people to part with large sums of money. That's always going to be hard, right? The other part, and Ayanda, I think you sort of summarized it so nice, is it's hard, and the word he used was like, it's hard like a puzzle, it's confusing. What do I do? Who do I speak to? What do I put in my deck? And that's the piece where you should be getting advice. You should be getting, input. And I think sometimes on the flip side, founders, we're always trying to walk through walls and just make it happen, and it's fine, I'll download, and this looks good, there's money on the table, I'll take it. But we forget to pause and stop and get that advice. So when we went through our funding, ask your friends to look at your term sheet, ask your professors, ask the guys at OCFO, put it out there. So, be open to asking for advice and go for it and get that input. The other thing you touched on, which I think is quite relevant in terms of, it's okay not to always have an exact answer. You said, what must I put in my 5-year projections? And that's true. And I think investors, often ask, how much are you raising? And they ask because they've got a typical check size and they want to know if you fit in their portfolio. But a good answer is, well, it depends. If we can get 2 million, then here's the strategy. We'll move out of the garage and we'll hire a few friends. If we can get 10 million, we can start hiring the engineering team, And I think these days you need plan C. We have a plan not to raise money. Funding raising was always hard. Now it's an order of magnitude harder. So I think, those are some of the points that resonated.
Awesome. Yeah, you mentioned it's hard, and it definitely is. I think one of the things that's really hard for entrepreneurs to know is when it comes to equity raising is around the valuations. People always ask, do I show my valuation? When's a good time to lay the numbers on the table? So just want to hear your thoughts on that as well.
That's a tough one, definitely. A few thoughts there. I think founders are competitive people. You want to be the best. You want to go for it. You want to go big. And the valuation is often the only sort of public metric that people see. And so you have this undue sort of focus on, we must try and get, the highest valuation possible, which is clearly, maybe it's not clear to everyone in the room, but it's not always the right tactic. So, if you start fundraising, don't optimize for valuation. Without the terms as well, that the valuation is irrelevant. It's your terms or my valuation or your terms. That's the debate that often happens. The other thing that really resonates with me is, when do you share it? It's critical. You have to share it at some point. You need to agree, okay? But try and get a yes/no answer first from the investor. Let's try to get on the same page. We're reasonable people. Do you want to invest? I'm sure we'll land on the right valuation eventually. But let's decide. Let's have a meeting of minds. Let's see if there's good fit, chemistry, etc. And then if you've got a reasonable investor and you're dealing with reasonable founders, then yes, then move on to the valuation. Put your numbers out there and have the discussion.
Well, yeah, no, that really makes it practical for that age-long question. Thanks so much for sharing. Greg, over to you. So you just mentioned earlier about that sizable debt deal you did. Luckily, you didn't have to struggle with the valuation arm wrestle. But hearing what other speakers have said, how has your experience been with the debt fundraising? Is it equally as difficult? Do you see it, is it quite a journey, or is it as easy as walking to a bank and signing an application form?
Well, signing the application form, you all have to do regardless. So, we had to do that. With valuations, I think, or rather with equity, you have to consider you're going to give up control. Are you going to let someone get in the boat with you and take the ride, take all the risks with you? Whereas with debt funding, of course, you have a term, you have an agreed term, you have to repay, you have to meet the debt funder's requirements. So the approach is different. With the debt funder, you don't need to show a valuation, you need to show a proof and an ability to grow. So that's the route that we took. Difficult, yes, it was extremely difficult. It took us, just to get this fund in place, it took us more than a year to do. We almost gave up quite a few times. We've approached banks numerous times. Even our own bank, we were declined for funding. It was extremely difficult. But I think what mattered most is that we just never gave up. A tip I can give on when you go out to get debt funding, you will definitely need to know your business very well. You need to be able to convey that to the debt funder, to have someone actually look at you and go, yes, I see potential here, and yes, I would like to be I would like to have a hand in that growth. So we went on that route. We did struggle tremendously, like I said earlier. I can't emphasize that enough, just how tough it was for us. So you should... Sorry, I'm just eating a blank here. Yes, going back to knowing your business well, we had to somehow relay that info and propose it to OCFO. They helped us, of course, put everything together. It was quite a few months that we went back and forth, just setting up the whole system. And at the end of the day, when we presented it, somehow it worked out. We say somehow, even though we still had the confidence in what we were doing, but at the end of the day, we still expected a no, hard no. And right at the end, I think right at the end, we had one interview and we just said, you know what, guys, let's not do it. It's not worth it. We've tried so hard. And OCFO called us. I think it was Dana called us and just said, guys, just come on, just try this, and what happens, happens. And well, it worked out well for us.
Sure. No, well on that grid. I think it's actually, it's always difficult to hear something is difficult, right? But but it's still just so encouraging to hear the success stories of how you get through it, and to hear that other entrepreneurs the size of it. And I saw quite a few nods as you were speaking. So yeah, I think it can be difficult. You guys have really been a beacon of light for a lot of people. And I'm sure the tips that you've shared today will encourage a lot of people just to go into fundraising with open eyes, but realize, with preparedness, there is light at the end of the tunnel. So thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, I would just, do we have time? And strict schedule here, it's accountants. No, I was just going to add, I think there is a fun element to fundraising, and for me, it's the chance to tell your story. You know, you get to get out there and you step away from the detail and the code and all the day and day. And as hard as it is, you get to step out and tell your story, which for me is the most exciting part about fundraising.
Awesome. Maybe we'll use the last minute to just see if there's any last bits of valuable golden nuggets we can share.
I'll start because I'm the lady. The only thing that I say over and over again is know your story and don't betray your potential. You know exactly why you're doing what you're doing, why you started, and it's so easy to get lost in fundraising. You want to give out, do you want debt? And someone says, no, give me 50% of your business. It's so easy when you're desperate to give up equity, and it is so expensive, but do not betray yourself in that manner.
Well, I'd say just never give up. I mean, we still have times where you sit and go, oh my word, I'm so tired. I don't know if I can keep going. But when you hit that brick wall, the main thing is to just not give up. You don't know what's waiting for you on the other end, and 9 out of 10 times it's great. I've had much more no's than I've had yeses, but those yeses has been extremely valuable. It changed everything. So don't give up.
Yeah, I'd add to that is, draw on your network, draw on the people in this room. A piece of advice that I found very helpful was, if you're doing your Series A or you want to do that in a year's time, speak to people who've just done that, who've just gone through that process. So that keeps you inspired. It gets you through, the no's that you always have to deal with. So I found that very sort of helpful and inspirational. Like, look to the guys who are just a year ahead. Go speak to them. How did they do it? How did they get through all the challenges? So I think that's my parting word.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks so much, everyone. I think we can give the amazing panel a hand for all this.
Colin, where are you? There we go. Can I ask you to join me? Guys, so we heard a little bit about debt and a little bit about equity. We specifically asked Colin from Linear Capital, he's one of the founders and the managing director there, to just come share about what is in the middle of those two things. What are alternative methods to fundraise if it's not pure debt and not pure equity? We think they've got something really interesting going, so we've asked them to come share a bit about that.
Hello, thanks very much. Great to meet some new people already, and some familiar faces. This is not going to blow your minds, but I thought it would be helpful for us to start on the same page. And in essence, funding is nothing more complicated than the exchange of cash today for some future cash flows. The bit that we need to solve for in understanding what might be alternative is exactly what those cash flows are. So I'm going to talk through 6 different funding mechanisms, going from the ones which I think are going to be most common to you to the ones that are least common, and then focus on our business, which is a specialist revenue-based financing company. As I talk through them, I'm going to refer to some of these 10 features of the various instruments in the panel that's kind of just been some of the really important elements around dilution and collateral have already been raised. And again, I think on this slide, you're unlikely to see things that you haven't seen before. The most important point around raising equity, in our view, is the permanent dilution that Ayanda mentioned. Not selling yourself short of your potential is a phrase that I love, and it is the thing which most founders are allergic to, is giving up equity, potentially also giving up control. Those aren't necessarily the same thing, certainly in the early parts of fundraising. But the benefit of raising equity is clearly that you have no immediate obligation to service that funding or to repay it. And that can be liberating, but you need to hold these two things in tension. I think Matt made the point around finding the right founder, the right investor. And particularly because equity investors are long-term investors, the amount of time that you need to invest to find the right founder cannot be understated. By contrast, debt requires you to service. That debt, whether it be an overdraft or a term loan facility, comes in multiple forms, but one of the reasons why founders and early stage businesses find it difficult to secure debt is because they aren't able to provide the personal or the business collateral required that the banks are asking for. I think that's one of the main reasons why we've seen an increase in the number of specialist lenders and NBFIs, or non-bank financial institutions. And our view is that that's probably likely to continue in the years ahead. So yes, you get the benefit of not having to dilute or lose any ownership, but the cash flow implications, certainly in the early parts, can be quite onerous. Safe notes, very similar in equity to, very similar in principle to equity. The only fundamental difference is that dilution doesn't happen today. It happens at some point in the future. Clearly the benefit for founders, and for those founders in the room, is there is also no obligation for you to repay that financing. But the funders are going to be paying very close attention to the next price round, because that is the point in time when the safe note converts to equity. And in our discussion with founders, this has been sort of their major source of uncertainty, is how significant is that dilution going to be when I have to dilute? And there are a range of terms that are important in determining how much you need to dilute. On the plus side, safe agreements are pretty standard, 6 to 8 page documents. No need to do evaluation up front, to the point that was made on the panel, and they are very common. By contrast, convertible notes are slightly more complex. They're bespoke to a particular deal. We've seen them that extend well beyond 20 pages, and I think again to the point that was made on the panel, it can take a long time to finalize these agreements and actually find the financing that you need. It is possible for the interest to be rolled up, so it's possible that in the first kind of few months or years you may not need to service the convertible notes, but be assured that at some point in time, at least at the maturity, that capital is going to convert into equity. Venture debt, of the kind of 5 that we've spoken about, is probably the one that is least well known, but we are seeing more and more players into this space. I think Edge was mentioned earlier. They have a pretty significant venture debt fund. The principal difference here, in our view, between venture debt and convertibles is that there is a requirement from day one to service that debt. It tends to be at a lower interest rate, but there's a warrant that the venture debt holder has to compensate them for the lower interest. And effectively what that means is at maturity, a portion of the funding is converted into equity. By contrast, there's a cluster of 3 types of revenue finance, which is not dependent on price rounds, doesn't require collateral. And the 3 are factoring or invoice discounting, MCA, which is merchant cash advance. The names of retail capital and merchant capital will be known to us in the room. And then revenue-based financing, which is, of all of the instruments I've spoken about this evening, is probably the least well understood. Kind of safe to say, even 3 years ago, or maybe 4 years ago, it wasn't popular outside of South Africa, but there has been a very significant increase in the provision of revenue-based financing internationally, and we don't believe that there's enough of it in South Africa. So revenue-based funding, which is kind of our business model, is the exchange of cash today for a share of future revenue. So how does it work in principle? we will provide an amount of capital up front in exchange for a fixed percentage of revenue until a repayment cap has been reached. Typically, that's between 2 and 8% of your revenue for a 24 to 36 month term. Again, these terms are actually quite common the world over for revenue-based financiers, and we typically provide 3 to 4 months worth of revenue as an initial investment amount. No dilution, no early settlement fees, no collateral is required. We see your revenue line as an asset class. It's, we often speak, Julia and myself, our co-founder, say that the best form of funding is revenue. Revenue-based financing is a fantastic way to leverage that. One of the beauties of revenue-based financing is that the repayments follow your revenue line. So in months or for seasonal businesses, as revenue declines, so your repayments do, and vice versa. Not all businesses are suitable for revenue-based financing. Clearly, because the repayments are linked to your revenue line, there needs to be revenue. And so we look for businesses that are post-revenue and post-product market fit. Not going to spend a lot of time on the other features, but to say that we're deeply passionate about supporting previously disadvantaged founders and female founders in South Africa. Not only is it important for you to find the right type of financing, and we're by no means anti-debt or anti-equity, we're just pro-founders. We believe that there's the right type of capital for each point in your growth cycle. In addition to financing, we're committed to providing post-investment support across these 4 pillars. And the reason we do it is very simple. Healthier businesses are better for the economy. It reduces our investment risk, but we're deeply passionate about leaving businesses to the best of our capabilities in a better position than we initially met them. I really have raced through kind of these 8 or 10 slides. Please grab me kind of at the drinks break or afterwards if you've got any questions, if I perhaps didn't explain anything particularly well, but Lo, thanks again for the opportunity. It was kind of great to share a little bit of the story with you.
Thank you, Colin. That was very, very interesting, guys. Grab Colin while he is here. Okay, we've got an interview coming up. Mr. Michael Buita, our head of growth, is here somewhere. Michael, there we go. And Tim, glad we found you.
Fantastic. So ladies and gentlemen, so my name is Michael. I'm the head of growth here at Outsource CFO. And as I like to say, my role is basically to connect the smart people with the other smart people to find solutions and to solve problems. Tim, on the other hand, is the founder of Home Energy. And what they essentially do is connect people to power in this day and age of darkness in South Africa. And basically they focus on supplier, installer, and solar finance. So Tim, in his illustrious career, has raised basically R1 billion in debt and equity financing, or rather fundraising, and he knows a thing or two about the discussion today.
Still learning, by the way.
Still learning, always learning. Yeah. That's the most important thing. So Tim and I, it's kind of like a business speed dating relationship. It was the first time we're meeting in person. It was about half an hour ago. So an interesting one. But from a home perspective, they were founded in 2021, have an absolutely meteoric rise over the past less than 24 months, and I've been through a couple rounds of fundraising. So today we're going to chat more specifically about the metrics and KPIs and tracking when it comes to fundraising, but we're going to free ball it a bit, as they kind of say, and see what kind of happens. But because we only have 10 minutes, we're going to really dive straight into it with the kind of pertinent questions. So Tim, taking that into consideration, what is your favorite food? No, I'm joking.
Sushi.
Sushi, me too, man. Nice.
Off to a good start.
Off to a good start. So Tim, taking that into consideration, apart from that terrible intro, when looking at fundraising, what do you think are some of the key and most important aspects throughout the process?
I think a lot of founders try and optimize for valuation and look for certain investors with a bit of star appeal, which is obviously very important because you want to get credibility onto your cap table. But it's not to shoehorn your fundraising strategy. It's to really look for the right investor-investee fit. And most people, I think, tend to look at it from a purely commercial point of view, which is numbers, KPIs, in a very structured form, and that's good. But I think fundraising is more art than science. And you need to really build good relationships with your investors. You need to suss out who they are as individuals, because once they give you the money, that's when the relationship starts. So you want to make sure you place the right bet. So I think just really doubling down hard on the people fit is something that most founders tend to not do, because they get really drawn into the quantum, what that money will do for their business in terms of capital allocation, what it might do in terms of perception, in terms of valuation, and who the investors are, but really focusing on making sure that there's really good fit and alignment.
No, absolutely, fair enough. I think that's an incredibly important point. When you spoke in the back, we spoke about capital and character, right? In terms of not only being able to access the capital, but someone who's able to increase your network, be able to add to what you're doing, and create value from a numerous and different points of view. So when looking at investors throughout this dating process, what are a couple of the most important things that you consider when looking at potential investors that not only you would like to attract their attention from, but ultimately bring on board?
So I think if I take a step back, it's more how do you get their attention? And while I am a big proponent of getting as many conversations out there as you possibly can, it allows you to refine your pitch, it allows you to get valuable feedback that ultimately puts you in a better position to potentially raise the money that you're looking for. I think having really strong other alternative founder introductions to investors is very powerful. And I would rather say doubling down on those and get as much insight from an existing founder who may have invested on their cap table that they could give you some insights about. They can give you also some input to your pitch deck and your narrative, which again helps you prepare better, but then really looking at pursuing founder introductions. If I just look at my cap table, I've got over 21 people in Home's cap table at the moment. Of those 21, 20 were founder introductions. So I think it speaks to the velocity and the probability of actually getting good investor-investee fit. But again, don't discount obviously doing any cold pitches.
Very interesting. And throughout this process of, lots of pitches, right? Lots of cold, lots of warm.
Yeah.
But taking a look back at the many that you've done, what were some of the biggest challenges that you encountered, not only dealing with people, but the process around fundraising too?
Herding cats. I mean, if I, again, look at the fundraising process, you start off doing research, you look for territory mandate fit, you look for stage fit, you look for tangential industries potentially, or even kind of like business model. Business models are the same that they've invested in before, so they've got some valuable insights. You look for their broader community network that they've built around them, and you can kind of start with a Kanban of leads in, and then you're trying to push those leads further down the funnel. And it's quite a stressful process. I mean, there have been many times where I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Why are they not moving? You name it, holidays, COVID. There are just so many factors that are just out of founders' control. And I think the big thing is not to lose hope. And obviously to build your funnel as big as possible so that you've got some probability on your side. But again, it goes back to my earlier comment, just getting really good introductions. I think that builds trust very quickly, and trust is very important to build velocity in your fundraising process. Trying to build trust early on, because that's really what investors are trying to do, and you should also be doing with an investor, it takes time. So you really have to, you're speed dating, your business is growing rapidly, you need to deploy capital very quickly. You're basically asking everyone to make a very quick decision within ideally 3 months. More realistically, in some cases, can be as long as 6 months, and obviously there's stories where it has taken much longer. If you just speak to a lot of founders who raised last year, I think they'll say it was an absolute bloodbath in terms of how long it would take for them to raise money. So yeah, I think just really building a good funnel, really looking for quality investors, looking for strong introductions, and not to lose hope.
Very important. The not to lose hope situation, since we have all just gone through an interesting time with COVID, but there was something that you mentioned there which really struck a chord with me, and that is building trust. Not an easy thing to do, very difficult, specifically in like a hyperbolic environment where everything's got a close magnifying glass on it. How is that something that you look at and look at sort of connecting with people on that trust level to kind of build that foundation as early as possible?
I think the sooner you can ask questions like, tell me a scenario where things have gone wrong in another investee portfolio company and how you responded, the better. The sooner you can speak to not just one GP, but multiple GPs, and you get to kind of suss out the team. Because any business, doesn't matter if it's an investor or a startup or just a general company, it's always a sum of the people. So you want to make sure that the culture of the people is pretty consistent, and that you can take a judgment call on to make sure that this is a good home for you from a founder's perspective. So I think that's the one that really comes to mind.
And always an interesting question in a bit of review, but there's a lot of people here who are very much interested in fundraising this year. With the experience that you've had, with the road that you've walked, some successful, some unsuccessful, what would you not do again?
So, one short bit of context. My business sits on the intersect between energy, which is infrastructure, but it's on-grid in Africa, which isn't sexy. We're not electrifying people who've never had access to electricity before. We are giving people energy security who are living in some of the wealthiest households in the country. That was an overlap problem. Then we are helping banks, retail banks, deploy financing through our marketplace. So you could squint and say it's a bit of a fintech. So what I struggled with is that we sat on the intersect of those two, but we kind of are very unique. There wasn't another example we could point to awards in Africa. And what that basically created in me when I was going through my fundraising journey was trying to shoehorn mandate. So trying to get my business to appeal to investors on either side, really pushing hard to try and get them to see the light, no pun intended, and it didn't work out well. It ended up with a lot of conversations and a lot of disappointment. I think really focusing on investors who get excited about the opportunity. So it doesn't matter what industry they're in. So again, this is kind of like I'm talking myself out of my previous advice around doing the research, building that Kanban of all suitable investors, really finding investors who back the vision and forget about territory, forget about TAM, and really back the operators to figure those things out, I think are the right kind of investors to look for. So I would say not shoehorn who you're speaking to, have conversations and really try and find the right investors, especially if you're coming from a place like ours where it didn't really fit in one specific category.
Okay, interesting to note. And then I see Lucille is giving me the eyes at the back in order to wrap things up. So I think just the final question from my side, Tim, and for anybody who's considering this process this year, couple words of advice? Couple things that you think that are really pertinent in terms of fundraising in 2023?
I think don't try and optimize for valuation. That's the reality. I think valuation is a distorted metric that most founders try to aspire towards. If you get the right investors, your valuation will come. So that definitely is one. I think be very conservative with how you're deploying capital. Again, I'm going to contradict myself, but be very conservative. Try and get to a place where you can be profitable. That's our game plan. We want to be profitable this year, and we still want to be raising money. It gives you a position of strength. And then lastly, look for a really good, solid lead investor who you almost could see as potentially becoming an advisor. That's kind of the positioning that I'm trying to portray here. Someone who just backs the business not just because they think this is a good place to put capital, but get someone who really believes in what you're doing, who becomes your champion. Because you want someone like that to network all the other investors around their community to come into your business, whether it's in the current round or whether it's in future rounds. So again, and I'll speak about this openly. I had my lead seed investor come in. We tussled on valuation. and I made a judgment call on character, and I can tell you the best decision I've ever made. He created over demand for my funding round, and is going to probably help us raise the next 2 rounds, hands down. So yeah, don't try and optimize for those things. Really pick the right people and persevere.
Thank you, Tim. Ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, Tim is taking a much-deserved holiday from tomorrow, so this is his last task for the week. So if we could please have a big round of applause for Tim Olsen from Home Energy. Thank you.
Andrew, I see you in the back there. Okay, guys, we are very privileged. Andrew, you missed our spiel in the beginning, but we said a major thank you to our headline sponsor tonight. Andrew represents Zoho Africa. He spearheads their development on the continent, and yeah, they're one of the best tools to scale your venture with that we've come across in all of the ecosystems we've worked in. So yeah, we've just asked the man to talk about just all the automation influence and building a good company that's investable at the end of the day. There's a lot of things that need to back that, and what they are doing with Zoho and their expansion and what they're doing, enabling entrepreneurial companies to do, is really incredible. So we just wanted to ask him to tell us a bit about kind of like how you can build the right infrastructure for a growing company that is investable, that can raise that capital around, that can do great things in the world. Andrew, over to you. Can we give this man a clap, guys? Thank you.
Testing. Can you guys hear me? You good over there? Cool. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me, and I'm quite excited. I only have 10 minutes though, so it's a topic that I could speak literally for 2 hours on. So I'm going to try and just jam it into 10 minutes, and I've put the most important topics that I want to talk about up on screen. So this is what we're going to talk about. The focus points. Have a connected ecosystem. So when you think of your technology solution for your business, you need to think of it as an ecosystem. Technology is here to stay. It's rapidly evolving. We've got AI now that everyone's looking at very closely, and so you want to have a seamless data flow, and you want cost optimization. Cost optimization. You also want to be mindful that your technology journey and your digital transformation could potentially be a very dark rabbit hole of money that you just keep spending. So you've got to look at all the tech tools that you're taking on and kind of forecast what it's going to cost you in the future. So when someone comes to you and say, oh, we're going to give you a free CRM, and you look down further and you see automation is about $80 a user, you need to be a bit careful and plan your digital transformation. Then blueprints, you want to map out all your business processes and your procedures, and you need to do that on your tech platform so that you have a good employee experience. Employees don't necessarily want to think how to do a process every time. They now want a tech system to tell them exactly how they need to do it. So the more you help them, the better and more efficient your business runs. And then the onboarding. When as your business is scaling and growing rapidly, you're going to have new staff members that come on board. You want to be able to have a single sign-on. That's what SSO is. You want security policies you can put in place. Data protection and privacy laws are a big thing. They're here to stay. You also want to have your share access and your LSM, which is a learning management system. And then quickly, the last topic I'm going to talk about is the business be an insights-driven business. So have your analytics and your reporting dashboards. All right, let's go into the first topic, the connected ecosystem. You want to stay away from what we call the integration spaghetti. Okay, and on the left-hand side, you'll see there all these different tech solutions, and those red lines represent a custom API integration. And if any of you have gone through that process, it can be very expensive. It is also expensive to maintain, and if it breaks, it's expensive to fix, and you can have lots of problems in cleaning up a mess. So you will probably never get away from custom integrations, but you want to limit them as much as possible. So you want to look on the right-hand side at a more connected ecosystem. And this is what it looks like. You get all your apps from as much of the same vendor as possible, where it's the same technology stack, which means it's built on the same foundation, which means that the data can flow very easily between the applications. I know I'm a bit biased, but that is our Zoho One offering, and those are all of Zoho's apps on there. So you've got your apps for your sales, your marketing, your email, your collaboration, your customer support, your HR. You've got contracts now for your legal stuff. What else is there? You've got your finance, your business analysis, your business intelligence and analytics. You've got project management, security and IT management, and even custom solutions. So if you don't have an app that kind of works in the department that you need, you just build your own custom app over there. Okay, and then make use, when you build these integrations, you've got the systems that connect easily, where you just click an install button and the apps connect and the data will flow between them. Then the second option is to get what we call a cross-platform connector. So you guys have probably heard of Zapier. We've got our own competitor to that is Zoho Flow, where you can easily log into one of your applications and it will give you a list of triggers. So if it's your Shopify store, you log in and you say, one of the triggers is an abandoned cart. You can say, if that happens, then I want you to do this in another app. And then you will go and log into, let's say, Zoho CRM and say, I want you to then log a task for a staff member to reach out to that person who's abandoned their cart. And so this is like your more low-code, no-code app connector. And then if we move on to blueprints, this is how you can put your business processes into an automated tool where your staff literally just have to log into the system. They just have to say that they're on, let's say, the quotations stage, and we'll take them through step by step as to what they need to do. I think over here it shows you that you have to also have an approval of a discount. So if the quote is over, let's say, 100,000 Rand, then you can offer a certain discount. But if, you can put rules in there that say that you can't offer more than a certain discount. So if you put all of these things in place, your business runs so much more efficiently, and then when you want to scale, it's super easy. Staff literally get into the business, and the system tells them exactly what they need to do. This is another view of the blueprint where you go and you map out your business process in the system, and this is the configuration side of it. So it's quite user-friendly. And you literally just drag and drop the different stages of the process and the transitions. So what needs to be done during the process. And then onboarding. Again, if you want to scale quickly, you need to be able to hire a staff member and then send them on an onboarding journey. Have courses, have a knowledge base that show them the different policies. You also want to build a company culture. Everyone talks about culture, right? You can start developing that from your onboarding presentations. I know we at Zoho, we do it. We explain to people exactly how we want them to interact. We explain to them when they can criticize. We explain to them when they can give feedback publicly on our internal Zoho Connect, which is our, it's like an internal social media for us to communicate with staff. And so you develop that company culture with your onboarding processes. Then again, also your security, your permissions, your access. When staff join, let's say they're going to join and you need them to access FICA compliance. You add them to the FICA group and it automatically gives them access to the folders and the files and the modules in your system that you would need them to have access to. You don't want to hire a staff member and think, okay, what must we give them access to? You want to add them to a group and it automatically gives them access. I see I'm getting also timing reminders, so let me quickly get to the next. Oh, I'm pushing the wrong button as well. Okay, this is most important, guys. So this is the last topic, is insights-driven business. So this is some research done by Forrester 2022, so it's very recent. An insights-driven business grows 10 times faster than the average global economy. And, they grow at an average of 30% year-on-year end. So that's incredible, guys. And when we say insights-driven, it's you collect all those different metrics. So you would collect, what's your marketing spend, how much revenue are you making, how many quotations are you closing, deals are you closing, so you can get a return on your marketing spend. You would do things to like the 10th degree where you find out how many quotes does a salesperson need to push out before they actually close a deal, and how many phone calls do they need to make for them to be able to push out a quote. And then, how many, let's say, prospects they need to get on their prospecting sheet in order to, make successful calls. So you want to get all those metrics into a dashboard, also your financial metrics. You know, we know very well that you need to have those, especially when you're looking for funding. And you know that only 7% in that research project, only 7% of businesses have advanced insights-driven analytics. So it's a big opportunity for people to focus on that, and your business will grow. And then they also talk about breaking down data silos. So whatever tech system you use, you need to bring all of that into one analytics dashboard. And so, yeah, you can bring it in from all the different dashboards, all the different technology suites that you use. Then this is just a video quickly just to show you, this is Zoho Analytics, where someone's just adding a CSV file. You can plug it into another tech system, but it uses AI now to find out where there's dirty data. So it's not a difficult thing. You don't need some heavy data scientist, tech guru to do your business intelligence. You load it and you'll see there on the right there, it's a little red part of the graph is saying that there's some inconsistent data. At the top there's a red thing, you'll click on that and you'll see that some of the data is messy, and then it gives you the tools to clean it. So now you can go and say, okay, I want to replace this, I think that is the currency or something there. I can't see it from here. But you'll see it'll give you options of how to replace it and stuff. And usually you would have to get like some technician to get into a SQL database and to do their coding magic. But with AI, it helps you. You'll see on the far right there is customer feedback. Okay, quickly this one. This is now, you'll see, I think there's Samsung spelt very differently. And so you can also clean up errors like that, So I know we were helping a company that had on their form, they had for the South African provinces, they had just a typing form. I didn't know that there were 5 different ways to spell KZN or KwaZulu-Natal, but there are, apparently. And the nice thing is this thing picks it up for you, and you can easily, without being heavily tech savvy, you can clean it up. And then this is really cool. This is sentiment analysis. So when people give you feedbacks and ratings and they say, oh, I'm happy with your service, I'm unhappy with your service, and then some people give you like an essay about the service they received, this AI will actually pick up whether it's positive, neutral, or negative for you. And then you can display that on a dashboard, which is pretty cool. So you'll see there all of a sudden it's now populated another column with all the positive and negative analysis. Okay, so I'm going to quickly skip to the next because I've got 1 minute, which is going to be interesting. So what does a 360 Insights Advanced Analytics dashboard look like? I'm quickly going to show you. So here you'll see that's the Facebook analytics. We've got QuickBooks. I mean, you would rather have Xero or Zoho Books there, right? But you've got your different dashboards, and then you've got an overview. Okay, I'm going to quickly show you what an overview dashboard looks like in Zoho Analytics. It's just going to load quickly. I believe the internet's very slow and we've got load shedding, so we'll see how quickly it loads. But this is a real live dashboard where it's going and fetching all the different data and it's producing all these different graphs. And the nice thing is you put your data in there and the AI will suggest to you, listen, do you want to have a funnel, or do you want a pie chart, or do you want to have a line graph and all the different nice little modules they have. You can even get a word cloud. Show of hands, how many people knew about a word cloud? Okay, well, that's good. I didn't necessarily know. But you'll see, you can see the most profitable products over there in a word cloud, which is pretty cool. And so it's nice that all this AI is now helping you to build these dashboards. Next slide. This is also AI, which is now going to dig into your analytics, and it's actually going to give you insights. So if we click on the top right there on Zia Insights, it's going to tell you that your sales was this over this period. And I can give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek into the future. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you this, but very soon we're going to be launching suggestions. So Zia is actually going to suggest to businesses, maybe you shouldn't be advertising on Yahoo, or maybe you shouldn't be advertising on Facebook. And if you are advertising, maybe you need to look at improving things. So the AI is going to get very, very powerful to actually help businesses make decisions based on the metrics and the data that they have in their analytics tools. And then furthermore, if we can just go to the next slide, please. And this is my last slide, so I think we're going to be good. There's also AI now for people who aren't super tech savvy and can build these dashboards where you literally just talk and you say, can you show me a dashboard of sales? Give me the top 10 products. And it uses natural language processing to deal with it. And so, yeah, guys, that's all I could fit in now. I'm happy to talk to anyone afterwards, but thank you.
Wow. Right, guys, we are at the highlight of the evening. Can I please get my last panel on the stage? So Danielle is with Next 176, who's part of the Old Mutual stable. They're a very interesting new venture fund. It'll maybe tell you a little bit about before he gets his panel up. But Gideon, Andrea, Laurie, can we all get you guys on the stage? And then you can maybe also you guys might have to do your own introductions. Yeah, you have such interesting backstories. Guys, we're very lucky to have this caliber of investors here with us tonight. Have fun.
Thank you. A lot of pressure coming from that introduction, so hopefully we match the expectations, but really glad to be here tonight and see so many familiar faces, but also some new faces, which is always good in such a small ecosystem. So my name is Danielle. I'm here from Next 176, and will be in charge of posting some questions to our panelists this evening. I'm part of Next 176. And Next 176 is a 100% owned subsidiary of Old Mutual. It was set up outside of the core business as a corporate venture capital team investing into startups to think about the next 176 years of Old Mutual. Some of the faces in this room today we're actually speaking to about investing into. I won't name any names, but if you see big smiles, it's probably those guys. So I'll pass over to our panelists one at a time. Maybe you guys can just give us a sense of the fund you're from, what you do over there, and then a brief background on yourself, and then we can dive into some questions.
Cool, yeah, thanks, Danielle. So my name is Gideon Greaves. I'm the Managing Director of CVVC Africa. We're a Swiss-based venture capital firm that focuses on investing in startups that utilize blockchain. We launched in Africa in July 2021, so it's a $20 million fund, and we invest from South Africa to Egypt, 10 portfolio companies so far in our journey, and 3 from South Africa. I was very excited to hear about the topic tonight from Lo. I've been on both sides of the table. Now being on the VC side, I've seen so many things that I wish I knew being on the other side, things I should have done to my pitch deck, the narrative I should have been selling, and I think if I had another crack at it, I could create a pretty great narrative to raise some cash. But yeah, happy to be here, guys, and looking forward to having this chat.
I'm not sure if this one no, it does work. Cool. Yeah, my name is Andrea Beaumont. I am a partner at Knife Capital. So Knife Capital, venture capital sounds quite dangerous. It is dangerous. No, but yeah, venture capital fund active since 2010, so I've been around for quite a while. We invest in technology companies, normally starting at about 10 million rand investment and go up now to about $5 million. So quite a wide range. Yeah, and for me, it's really one of my personal ambitions. As you can hear from the accent, it's not South African, it's German. But for me, it's really trying to kind of go and prove that South African technology can really kind of compete on a global level. So if I can kind of go and get the picture of a South African entrepreneur that I kind of been part of the journey of onto the cover of a magazine in a positive way, not in a negative way. Of course, then I think I've done my job. So it's really about kind of dealing with all those perceptions around Africa and technology. Can it work? Can't it work? And that's really a little bit my mission, to kind of prove to everybody that absolutely companies in South Africa can do it, can compete globally.
Thanks. As you probably noticed, I'm not Natalie Colby. My My name's Laurie Clark. I'm Chief of Staff at Notion 22. Notion 22, we're a Pan-African late-stage venture capital fund. We are raising a total of $200 million US. We have raised $160 million to date and are actively deploying. In terms of the type of investments we're looking for, we're really looking at tech-enabled businesses across sub-Saharan Africa, primarily in the markets that we have a presence. So we have team members in South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, and also Ghana. And we do invest slightly later. So we invest typically from Series A to Series C, tickets typically $2 to $10 million. And we really want to position ourselves as that local partner for companies that get to this stage. We don't necessarily want them to have to go to Europe or to Silicon Valley for funding. We want to position ourselves as a partner in Africa that can help them expand across the continent.
Next question.
Sorry, yeah, my mic needed a degree basically to get it working again. So, Gideon, I mean, you speak about being on both sides of the table. I think one of the things that's quite prevalent now is we've gone from a proverbial handful of VCs to tons of VCs active on the continent. What would your advice be to founders who are out there looking for capital, and what are some of the things they should be looking for in a VC when going to the market?
Yeah, it's a great question. I could talk about that for quite a while, so I probably won't get all my thoughts out now, but I think the one really important part for all founders to know, so first of all, as a founder, you know your customer really, really well, right? You know your product really, really well. You have to. As a VC, our customer is our investors and our LPs, and our product is our startups. There's another spin-off in terms of who your customer is as a startup founder, right? And it is your VC. And what I find is that a lot of founders that we engage with don't understand the venture capital model and don't understand exactly what VCs are looking for. The other thing is that we also get approached quite often by SMEs, and loosely using that term because you could argue that a startup is, you know, a business that has the potential to 100x and become a unicorn, where an SME could be a mom and shop paint store that does very well, but it's not going to have a liquidity event for someone like a VC. So what we find quite often is, you know, we very early stage, right? We have an accelerator and we do direct investments, pre-seed and seed. So we might look for very different things to what, you know, Norskin might look for. One of them is you know, quality founders that are emotionally attached to what they're doing. They don't have any other side hustles. The success of their product would speak to who they are as a person. We want them to at least have that mindset, because that means that they're able to pivot and persevere if things go wrong. So often, sometimes we're not fully convinced about the business model, but we back the jockey. So I think bringing that point across as a founder is really important. The other part that we look at is that hockey stick that everyone talks about when you're looking at forecasts. We have to see the hockey stick. If you were conservative and it looked like the Bitcoin graph, then it's not something that we're interested in. In fact, we actually spoke to, I took a startup to our IC recently, and before we took the startup to our investment committee, the founder had obviously shared the forecasts with me, and they were very conservative. But I knew that she was fantastic to take this business to the next level. I knew the idea and was great. But that was dangerous, because if I didn't have that foresight to tell her to make that change, our investment committee would have said no. It doesn't matter a lot about the ridiculous assumptions that you make. We just want to know that you have the vision to take this from $1 million, $2 million company that it is when we invest to $250 million company at least. You know, 2x doesn't make sense for us. We've got to have these 100x opportunities. And we need to see that you're the type of founder that believes you can scale very quickly, because our product is that we need to exit in 8 years, which means you have to have the vision to increase sales or users or merchants at a rapid pace, which also means that you have to raise a lot of capital. And sometimes we meet with founders that only say, oh, this is the only time we're going to raise, it's going to be $2 million, and that's it. Unfortunately, there's other startups in the market that will raise a lot more capital, which will give them the power and the resources to grow and create that liquidity event that a VC is looking for after 8 years. So in summary, I think what I'm saying is really trying to understand the VC and what they're looking for, and then you can start speaking their language and it makes that pitching process a lot easier. In terms of what founders should look for in a VC, I think it goes without saying, if you can strategically look for someone on your cap table that can add value, help you raise more capital, open up doors, that goes without saying. I think that's the norm for most.
Thanks, Gideon. So, I mean, you spoke about some harder issues. You also mentioned the IC, and I think VCs often tell you about this. We're going into IC next week, and you think about it as this sort of mystical environment. But and Darren, my question is to you, maybe give us a little bit of a sense of, what goes on in an IC? What are some of the softer issues you talk about? What are some of the things that people are really diving into at that level where the decision is being made?
Sure. I think one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs really don't understand is that as a VC, as an angel investor, it's different. But as a VC, I'm a custodian of somebody else's money. It's not my money. I have a mandate. I have been told to bring a certain return, and that's what I'm being held accountable for. And equally so, while it is risk capital, so if some uncontrollable events happen, I'm forgiven because it's uncontrollable. If COVID happens, or, all those kind of things, if the markets totally collapse, there are certain things, that's fine. When it comes to the controllable events, if I haven't done my homework, if I haven't done a proper due diligence, if I have just looked at an entrepreneur and saying, you know what, I like you, I'll give you the money, and then something goes wrong, it impacts my wealth creation, it impacts the credibility that I have with my investment committee and my LPs, and it impacts my ability to raise the next fund. So, as investors, we quite often, we call it fall in love with a deal. You kind of go and spend a lot of time with the entrepreneurs. You actually want to do the deal. You see the weaknesses, but you really want to kind of go and do this. So the investment committee is this terrible dragon who is absolutely not emotionally involved. They normally haven't met the entrepreneur. We have to present them an investment case. They look at it, and they look at it ice cold from the perspective of, does that fit the mandate? Is that helping us to achieve what our LPs want us to kind of go and do? And can we add value? They've got certain criteria. And so when we kind of go and start pitching to this investment committee, we have to sell the company. And quite often they ask some nasty questions. And when I say nasty, it's like, well, they actually find this little, well, is this cash flow long enough? Can this done? Whatever. Have you really kind of look at competitive differentiators? And we need to kind of go and fight for the companies. And it's quite interesting. I sometimes find myself fighting more or fighting less. And when I kind of fight less and also know that there's something kind of internally wrong, actually, maybe I don't actually really want, or not that convinced of all of this. But our investment committee is definitely this bridge between the entrepreneur and us really building a long-term relationship, and the source of the funding and making sure that we really kind of go and deploy it in the right way. And yeah, it's sometimes quite tough. I mean, if entrepreneurs think raising money is hard, I can tell you going through an investment committee is, yeah. You turn grey quite often. It's not always fun, yeah.
I like that you mentioned that it's long-term capital. A lot of people forget, especially because you're just trying to get the transaction over the line, that actually this is, on the continent now, typically a 7 to 10 year relationship that you're entering with somebody, and you really want to be aligned with people. Lordy, maybe you can speak a bit about that. How does it differ in this type of long-term transaction? What are some of the things that you would look for as opposed to somebody who's, entering into a short-term deal that might only sort of last maximum a year?
Yeah, no, I'd echo that. I think what's really important is this is a partnership, is how we view it as. This is a long-term relationship. And it's a partnership, and like any long-term relationship or partnership, trust is paramount. And it's important to start building trust from the get-go. How do you do that? A lot of the time it's about transparency and honesty, like it is in any relationship. It's really important to recognize the challenges in your business. Starting a business and growing it is really difficult, and we know that. So it's really important to be upfront about the challenges, about the speed bumps, because we don't want to get surprises down the way. We've got investment committees to go to. We don't want to be blindfolded. If you're upfront with us from the beginning, it really helps build credibility and trust going forward. Be honest about your competitors. Obviously, talk about the weaknesses and why you're so much better, but recognize their strengths. It shows us that you've done your homework, you understand your market, you understand your competitors, and really builds credibility. And on this transparency point, I think it's also important that it goes both ways. People in our shoes as well, as investors, it's important for us to be transparent. It's important for us to give you clarity on our investment process, what the hurdles might be as well. So it is a two-way street. I think another element that's also quite important is if you're going to talk the talk, walk the walk as well. These relationships are long-term. We'll typically start speaking to investors or companies a long time before we invest. And if you say you're going to do something, it's great when you do it. If you've got a target to hit, if you've got a product that you're going to launch and you do it on time, that's a fantastic way to actively build credibility very easily. Obviously, stuff happens and there can obviously be circumstances that stop that happening, but don't make it a habit, because we want to have faith that you're going to hit your numbers so that we can go to RICs and present it with confidence. I think ultimately this is a personal business. Relationships are important, and I think especially what's going on in the market at the moment, it's tough, and relationships are even more important, especially as we're building these long-term relationships.
Yeah, I think we should all go and study psychology and maybe theater or something like this. I think acting, I think that would be the right technique. But the one thing I want to kind of add to this, when it comes to this trust and the relationship, choosing the right investor or going into this investor-investee relationship is a 10-year journey. Now, if you're going to go and start thinking about who were you 10 years ago, now all of you have changed in the last 10 years. And if you're going to go and choose an investor today, you will be different in 10 years. Now, think about how many relationships have you had in your life that have lasted 10 years. People joke about this in good times and in bad times till exit takes us apart. There is some truth to it. I mean, the big point is, if you choose the wrong partner and not understand that that partner will change over those next 10 years, you need to walk that journey. The person we invest in today is not going to be the person we are going to walk the journey within 5 years' time. Life has taken its toll, and so the other way around. So do not take this decision lightly, and really just take it from there, because, yeah, if this relationship kind of breaks, it could break your business.
Yeah, Laurie, I think what's valuable what you're saying, sort of, especially in these times, I mean, and today is hinting to that now, in the good and the bad. We're in a period now where, okay, Africa was the only sort of region in venture capital to show growth last year. Everywhere else we saw a decline. You guys see, what's dominating in the headlines. We got another repo rate increase today, which my budget is really not happy about as a homeowner. But speak a little bit about that, Gideon. How does this environment impact you as a VC and impact the deals that you are doing? And maybe speak a little bit about how does it impact, the way you look at the founder? Does that change in these times?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big point that I'm getting across from your question is the circumstances of Africa. How does that play out, right? And for us, as I mentioned earlier, the customer product analogy of our investors and our LPs being being our customers, we spend a lot of time looking at startups, and then we spend a lot of time raising capital. And our thesis is based on the fact that a lot of developed markets want to diversify into an emerging market, and Africa is that next emerging market. But then there's all the other stuff that comes along with it, right? So half the time we're trying to convince people that blockchain is the next technology to invest in. That's probably about 10% of the time that we're doing our convincing, because if they take the meeting, they're relatively convinced. The other 90% is convincing them on the market, and as we all know, there's a lot of political challenges, but those challenges also present opportunities for very disruptive products, to penetrate the market, and that's why Nigeria is kicking our ass in terms of South African innovation, because they have a lot of problems there, and they don't have a plan B. South Africans are a bit lazy, at least the high LSM portion of this country. If you mess up in Nigeria, there's no plan B, which is why when I visit my counterparts in Switzerland, they're quite cushy over there. African mentality is like hustle or nothing. We've got the highest entrepreneurship rate in the world, actually. African Development Bank did a report, 22% of working age Africans own their own business, and that's because they have to. So I think in summary, it presents both an opportunity and a lot of hard questions for us to answer about the market, where we see it going. There's no doubt that Africa is going to work out. Is it now, or is it in 2 years' time, 3 years' time? Have we hit the market at the right time? A lot of the data says yes, but we get a lot of those types of questions.
No, agreed. I mean, some people speak to the fact that on the continent we innovate out of necessity and not necessarily out of luxury. So that's one of the big sort of nuances between us and, call it, North America or Europe. But Andrea, I'm quite interested. I mean, you are German, you came down here, you got into VC. Why not just do VC in Europe? What brought you to the continent?
Good question. No. I mean, first of all, the grass is always greener on the other side. I mean, it's of course, it's a very, very easy thing to do, but I just see the opportunities here. For me, in Germany, in Europe, a lot of things are so regulated that you can't really go and innovate, that you can't really go, you also can't break boundaries. It's like here, you can actually, you can try shit, you can do things. I mean, you can actually kind of go and do it, and ask for forgiveness later. And I think innovation, but innovation, so first of all, I mean, we've got enough problems so that we are not shy of problems to solve, first of all. Then I think the frame of reference that we have here is different, because we need to kind of go and factor in, do I actually have Wi-Fi? Do I have electricity? Do I have this? Do I have that? It's like, but by questioning assumptions that in other countries they don't even question, we come up with totally different ways to do things. And I think that actually makes us different. That makes it special. And actually, I think through this, we actually have a competitive advantage, because, as I said, our frame of reference is different. And it just gives a slightly different edge to kind of innovation. I mean, plus the weather is great, the wine is great, the food is great. No, but seriously, I mean, I go to Silicon Valley, and I kind of go and have those startups that pitch this dog color that turns green when your dog has just had whatever. And I'm like, and they actually get funding, and they get funding like millions thrown at it. And I'm like, you're not really solving a problem. This is just so useless. And for me, this is really what this is about here. I mean, we are solving problems, and we are showing the world that we can do it, and we can do it differently, and that's what I love.
And it's less personal, right, in those developed markets like the US, because there's 100 investors on your cap table.
Yeah, it's all of this, and it's just about money, and it's spray and pray, and every investor kind of go and puts in $20,000, and if you make it, that's fine. If not, so what? And okay, so you've got this dog collar that kind of turns out, or that kind of responds to your kind of whistle. Oh wow! I mean. Is there a market for it? Show. Let's throw money at it. I mean, no, sorry, it's just, no. So the day that you can find that Knife Capital has invested in a dog collar that whistles or turns green or blue, I'm out. I mean, then you know, then the time has come for me to go and go somewhere else. That's for sure.
No, look, I mean, you joke about that, but I think it's...
I'm serious.
It's been quite funny also seeing overseas investors talk about the return to fundamentals, and when you think about profitability, and actually for a lot of African investors, they're talking about that from day one. The appetite for losses are not really the same here. People want to see a revenue model quite early on. They want to know what your path to profitability is actually looking like. So going in with the same mindset that you think you're seeing in sort of Silicon Valley, and going to speak to a VC like that is not necessarily going to see you succeed in this market over here. Laurie, maybe speak to some, I'm speaking to differences cross-continentally, but maybe you guys invest across the continent. What are some of the differences you're seeing between South African founders versus some of the differences you might see further north?
Yeah, look, I think there are differences that we see, specifically in South Africa compared to the rest of the continent. For example, in terms of expansion goals, in South Africa we see the real aim a lot of the time is to go to Europe, to go to the US, and that's a good investment move as well. You have this local currency base and you're earning hard currency, we can see the value in that. Whereas our kind of Kenyan team and our Nigerian team, it's a lot more into market. Maybe they have higher opportunities to solve there, or they just don't see the need to go. They're trying to solve maybe to some degree more localized African problems to some degree that they can see in Kenya or they can see in Nigeria or Ghana as well. Whereas a lot of the South African entrepreneurs we speak to as well are actually maybe slightly more technical, SaaS products that they're looking to sell to enterprises, and it's problems that they have in the US and Europe as well. That's where maybe one of the fundamental differences I think we see.
Got you. So I just got the 1 minute flasher, but...
Can I make a comment on that?
Go for it.
I mean, the other point that we see is that, I did all your comments. The other one is that, we believe also there's this sort of arbitrage opportunity in Africa because there's limited access to capital in that early stage environment. Most VC capital that's flowing to the continent is from bigger international VCs. Because they don't have boots on the ground, and because they look at the market in a sort of mitigated risk sort of way. They're only investing in those validated growth rounds, which gives opportunity for those, those new opportunity, for investors like us that are doing pre-seed and seed. With that being said, South African startups, the point I wanted to make is it's always very high valuations, founders and MVP and nothing else. In Nigeria, for example, at a couple of startups we have there, they're bootstrapped, they have revenue, they have users, they have employees. I mean, the one startup, we were the first money into their business. They had 16 employees in Ghana. Another one in Nigeria, they had 9 employees. South Africans, we're like the southern tip of Europe. We've got these crazy valuations. It doesn't make sense for the market. If you look at companies like Yoko and Ozo, awesome ideas, haven't managed to scale outside of South Africa, which is to your point about being in that part of the continent. Those entrepreneurs are thinking, how can we scale across the continent very quickly, not just how can we stay in South Africa and maybe try and go to Australia or the UK.
Thanks, Gideon. So maybe a couple of things I personally will take from this. Our still mentality in South Africa could be improved. Maybe we can think a bit about that and work on that. Think about your relationship with a VC as a long-term relationship. It's about trust, it's about investing for the future, and it's about making sure that you can actually sit across from the table from this person in 10 years' time. And then finally, if you find yourself founding a dark-collar business, it's time to pull out. Thanks.
Thanks.
Sure. Guys, can we do one more round of applause for our panel? Thank you so much. That was next level. Guys, now you know you need to go find afterwards. We are at the end of our agenda. Thank you very much for sticking it out. It's a school night, so it's a late one. But yeah, there will be, I think, some last snacks, maybe a couple of drinks still. Very interesting people in the room here. This is quite special what we have tonight. So try to stick around if you can. Just for, is Andrew is still here. The one last shout out to these guys. Thank you very much for making tonight possible with us. Really appreciate it, guys. Yes, please, a clap for them. And then for all our speakers, can I quickly get all our speakers just in the front so we can give you a little gift from our CFO. You can clap for them one more time if you want.